Hey, I'm Dom Gervasi, owner and producer of Made in Brooklyn Tours, going virtual from my apartment to interview people who are making it in Brooklyn and elsewhere for my new Making It series. In this episode, I'll be interviewing Renee B. Radenberg, creator of glass fine art at Belle's Creation. Renee is a fine artist specializing in glass sculptures, mobiles, and jewelry, which have been exhibited in numerous art shows, especially here in New York City. Hi, how you doing, Renee?
Hi.
How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. First of all, I got to say this uh, before starting this recording, I went again to your website and I watched that video. It is such an uplifting video. I think I should watch that before I do any of these Making It interviews in the future because it makes me feel so good to see someone creative doing something that they love and learning about you too. I understand you love what you do so much. Um, just for me, just so you know, I do the Made in Brooklyn tour. I've been doing it for about 10 years, and I love doing tours. But my favorite thing to do is to discover new creative people and businesses to include in my tours. So often that means I'm out and I'm riding my bicycle or going to a part of Brooklyn that maybe I'm not so familiar with, and I'm meeting people. Meeting people like yourself, and it's a wonderful experience for me to do that. So, Renee, maybe you could, tell us about yourself. Tell us.
Been artistic my whole life. Meaning that my parents encouraged me as a young child to, do coloring books and draw and stuff like that. When I went to public school, and as I grew up, I had really good art teachers in junior high. And in fact, my high school teacher was a huge mentor to me. I did painting, I did illustration, and I actually went to Parsons School, which I learned uh, immense amount of work, artwork, drawing, and and then about 2001, I had gone to up to Maine, and mobile that was made of wire and beads. And I always was fascinated with mobiles. When I was a kid, I always had things hanging from my ceiling all the time. And I said, well, I can make that. So, and then that same year, I went to Sedona and I saw this artist that used recycled glass making wind chimes. So, my sister was learning how to do stained glass. So I was asking her the process. So I started breaking up bottles and coating them with copper foil and then making small mobiles. So I did a lot of craft fairs. And then from the craft fairs, I was actually, people came up to me and asked me to exhibit my work. So I started making larger mobiles, and eventually I made sculptures out of found glass, scrap glass, and using the copper foil method that you would with stained glass. One of my mentor artists about 10 years ago or so said to me, you really need to create, because my mobiles were made out of copper tubing and conduit. You got to weld your metal or do something with your glass. So I decided to take fused glass at Urban Glass in Brooklyn, in downtown Brooklyn, and I got hooked fusing glass. So I've been fusing glass now for 9 years, and I love it. And from my background of art and I had to learn a lot of technical stuff with glass because what was in my head didn't necessarily come out of the kiln. So I I take a ton of classes over the years to learn different methods of techniques of glass, kiln work glass. I'm strictly kiln work, and which has allowed me to do all kinds of different techniques and different looks of glass. For my sculptures, my wall hangings, and also I do functional glass, which is platters and vases, jewelry, that kind of stuff.
So you were really, really fortunate because your parents were encouraging. You mentioned your sister, so your sister's a creative person too, I guess, from what you just said.
Creative in her way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So your family's totally behind you. You go to art school. You're absorbing what your high school teacher is teaching you, and you're going on the circuit of the craft shows, and then that's wonderful. Where did you show your work first?
In Rockaway. I first did a craft fair here in Rockaway, and I was approached by people that belonged to the Rockaway Artists Alliance at that time. And that's where I actually exhibited, was the Rockaway Artists Alliance. From there, I was able to get in contact with other artists, be mentored by other artists, and from there I branched to other areas. I exhibit mainly in Brooklyn now, and I joined the Brooklyn Waterfront Artists Coalition. Also, the Williamsburg Art and Historical Center has my work. She's a big patron of mine.
You're talking about, is that Yuko Ni at the WA?
Yes.
Right. Yuko's terrific, and BWAC is amazing. I love BWAC. I love it. Are you exhibiting at the current exhibition?
Because I'm curating a glass show in the fall there.
Mm-hmm.
This glass show, it was supposed to be the spring show. It's transparent as glass ? And so now we're doing a physical show in the fall. So I'm going over there to decide which space I want. I've curated shows there. I've also curated at WA Center and also at the Rockaway Artists Alliance. So I do curate also.
Because on your website you have your bio. Did you write your bio?
Yes. You
wrote that because it's especially the first paragraph, your description of the properties of glass. I could tell you really love glass. It's evident even in your writing. So what hooked you? What was so interesting about glass for you?
Well, number one, it was glass itself for me is such a, it's transparent, but it can be opaque. And it's just like a magical type of medium for me. That I could see through it, or I could see layers. And I just, it just fascinates. Glass has always fascinated me, but learning how to actually make it in the kiln and do certain things was fascinating. And it also piqued my interest. It's a huge learning curve to be a glass artist, from being a regular artist, a painter. But it's an amazing journey of learning and how to do things and to make it look easier, but it's not. So the other thing is my work for me, because I do mobiles and I do wall hangings and sculptures, my work is I want to bring it forward that people can decide what they want on it, but it's also a positive moment of just looking of awe. And so it's a playful type of medium for me for my work. I just love people looking at it and, just being in the moment and not, I don't like my work to be negative. I want it to be positive, and glass really helps me do that.
On my tours, we have visited glass artisans, and often there's some confusion for the guests because they don't understand that the artisan isn't making the actual glass. They're making the work of glass, right? So they're not actually creating the glass itself. That's the material that's being used to make the piece, right? Tell me I'm right about that.
It
I'm looking at you, I'm like, oh God, did I get that wrong?
No, I think I know what you mean. I'm not making the glass. I use sheet glass. I use sheet glass powders. I use glass broken up, and billets, which is like big thick pieces of glass. So we're making glass in a sense where we're melting it and reforming it.
Right.
So in different ways. As a
Mhm.
kiln worker, we have to melt it flat first. We put it over different molds to make the different shapes that we need, or different things. But I've been into casting year, been taking a bunch of classes, and that is actually making a wax using the lost wax method that's used for like brass. So we're making a wax piece, putting plaster around it, melting out the wax, turning it around, putting glass pieces on top of it, and letting it melt into the mold. So that's taking just regular glass and melting it into a mold. So you are reforming glass. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you for proving me right. And I was like, "Shh," you're looking at me like, am I saying this correctly? And the other thing is that, when, for example, if you go to Italy, right? You go to island of Murano, and there you could see the glass workers be blowing glass, and I think many people think that that's the only form, that's the only
Yes.
way that you can work with glass is by blowing glass, but
Mhm.
fusing glass, slumping glass, cast glass, cutting glass. There's so many different ways of working with glass, and like you were saying, it's a very technical art. You always need to keep learning. It seems like you're always learning, and which is great. And I think people ought to appreciate that. I mean, everybody has a window. I have no idea how that window is made, right? On an so I think it's good that people appreciate how difficult it is to work with glass, especially like with commissioned pieces, right? You work on commissioned works, and from what I understand, and then you also have some pieces that are already made that you could purchase right off your website, right?
Right. All my pieces are unique. I have an e-commerce on my website, but I commission also a lot of work because people want something a different color. Um, what you see on my website, you could possibly have something similar to it, but it's not going to be exactly the same because of the way the glass, or however the process I'm making it. To get back to your question before, I always get asked, "Oh, you blow glass," when I say I'm a glass
Right.
artist. Right. Everybody thinks that the glass blowers are the glass artists, but there's so many different techniques. And there's also what we call flame work and the neon lights that you
Right.
see, that's glass art also. And people that work in flame, it's an open flame and they're melting rods and doing different things. It's really cool. So one of the reasons why I like to curate, I'm also pushing to curate a lot more glass shows, is to expose people to the different techniques of glass artists.
I think
So
that's great. I'm glad you're doing that because, first of all, Brooklyn has a lot of history with glass, right? New York City has a lot of history with glass, and you mentioned urban glasses. And urban glass has done a good job of making the public aware of the different glass arts. Is that where you typically go to learn more about working with glass?
um, I've done urban, I've done classes at urban. I've also studied up morning, which is upstate New York near Ithaca, for 2 weeks. And I've also studied in Scotland for 2 weeks, doing glass casting. So there's glass places all over the United States that artists can go to. The local here, if you learn glass, is Urban Glass. For glass blowers, there's also Brooklyn Glass,
Right.
and Bullseye Glass Company. I use their glass. They have a resource center up in Mamaroneck, and they not only sell the glass, but they have classes. Right now, there's no classes due to COVID, but I've learned a lot of. And there's a lot of international artists literally come around to these organizations and places and teach their methods. And that's how I've been learning through wonderful, amazing glass artists that have perfected their method or their way of working, which I've learned from every single one of them.
I'm glad you mentioned all these resources that are available right here in New York State. Obviously, if you're an appreciator of glass, and I love glass, the Corning Museum is a beautiful, beautiful museum of all sorts of glass art and historical. Other glass is historical. Corning glass actually started in Brooklyn as a Brooklyn Flint Glass Works. So just to give an idea of how things begin, so many things have emanated from Brooklyn.
They left Brooklyn and they went up the river and they settled in Corning back in the 1800s. Amazing.
About 1864. Yeah.
Yeah. And glass itself has not been an art, considered an art until about the 20th century. It's optional. I mean, you have stained glass. The Corning Museum has the oldest piece that we know of from the ancient Egyptians. It's a small vessel, and so it's always been something to put something in it, like water or food or bottles. And then in the 20th century, mid 20th century, people started using glass making art pieces. So it's a very new medium in a sense for the fine art arena. And which is exciting because people think we're craftsmen, but also we're artists. And so it's nice to break into the fine art arena.
I have a question for you because you're in Rockaway Park. I often go to Rockaway. I typically go to Belle Harbor, the beach there, and sometimes I could find beach glass. Sometimes I'm wondering if you ever are able to use that beach glass in your work.
The thing about is when you need the same type of glass to melt together. Beach glass, you don't know where it came from. When I was making found glass objects years ago in mobiles and sculptures using just this stained glass method, I can use it because I'm not melting it. So when you melt glass has properties where they're soft to hard, and you need to know the type of glass you're melting with because then they become incompatible, which means they break. So I use Bullseye Glass for everything that I do. I don't mix my glasses or type of glass because I know that the compatibility of Bullseye Glass will keep the structure and not break. And the breakage can occur it looks fine when it comes out of the kiln, but it can occur like a year or two later. So it destabilizes the glass and incompatibility. So I could use found glass to just adhere it to a piece, but I can't. What do you call it? Use it in the kiln.
You had mentioned a couple of times Bullseye Glass. What's the significance of Bullseye Glass?
Bullseye Glass Company in Oregon been in existence since the 1970s, and they've tested their glass, and plus they give a huge amount of do a huge amount of experimenting with glass, so that you know that you could safely fire the piece 2, 3 times, not worry about it being king. There's other glass companies. They've actually gone. There used to be more, but they've gone down significantly. And there's a whole schedule how to fire glass. So instead of like confusing myself with schedules, I just stay with Bullseye Glass Company. But there are glass artists that use other glass. Casting, there's other companies for casting where the glass has more lead in it, especially glass blowers, that they want the glass to flow more. So it has more lead in it than what the glass I'm using. So they're all different glass companies, but this is the one I use the most.
Thanks. I understand. It's like if you find a good mechanic in Brooklyn, stay with the stay with that mechanic because you know what you're getting.
And in my studio, I make my magic. My studio has been rebuilt because in Sandy, I actually lost my studio. There was 8 feet of water coming in. I lost my everything. And from that storm, though, I've rebuilt my studio better. I use steel tables instead of wooden. I have steel shelving. I've done a lot to mitigate any kind of flooding. So to me, I made it bigger and better than what it was. So I'm just going to scan my studio to just give you a fast look of what it looks like. This is where I cut my glass. And this is my work table. And in the back is my kilns that I have. I have a very large kiln. And then I have a very small kiln. These are the molds that I use, which they're wrapped up. And then on this side is where we cut glass. When you cut glass, you need water. This is my saw, and then I do different grinding of glass. And then this is where I do my photography of my glass pieces. There's another grinder that I use with water. As a glass artist, it's a very, you need a lot of equipment. And so that's why there's all this stuff in my studio. So these are the sheets that I use, the different colors that I have. And then up here is literally powders and coarse glass, which I'll show you in a piece what I use them for. For kiln glass, we take the sheets of glass and we put different things on it. The sheets are different colors, so I put powders on, or I put the chunks of glass, or I put other sheet glass on it. We also have what we call stringers, which is like spaghetti, glass like spaghetti, long, very thin. We have rods that are very thin. And we put things on top of it, on top of glass, put it into the kiln and fire it. A firing could be a full day, a half a day. Way you need to bring it up and bring it down. It's a technical process. For casting, you're actually making the wax molds, and then you're putting a plaster around it. You're melting out the wax. You're turning it around, and then you're putting chunks of on top of it to melt into the space of what that was. Like I showed my hands, that literally the glass went into, it was a wax mold with my hands. And when the wax went out, it left an empty container where the glass can go into, and it melted into, and it makes it look like the hand. That's a very long method, and it's very long in the kiln because it's solid. It's a thick piece. You need to cool it. You need to bring up the heat slowly, and you need to cool it slowly. So it could take days, depending on the piece. Hot glass or blown glass is literally taking hot glass, melted glass that's in a furnace. They call it the glory hole, with a stick, and they wrap the melted glass around the stick, bring it out and blow into it, and that's where you get the bubble, or you get the different shapes with glass, so that it's a whole different thing. I could never have do blown glass down here in my basement because of the temperature and everything. The reason why I have kilns in my basement is because I have special fiber kilns that keeps the heat within the kiln and not outside in the environment.
And what about stained? You did. Yeah. Thank you very much. And what about stained glass?
So stained glass is using sheet glass or different other glasses that whoever the stained glass artist wants to do, and mainly using a copper foil, literally a copper foil put around the glass edge, and then solder the pieces together, and or they could use lead channels, and then that there's no fusing with that, except where there's stained glass artists use to make faces, like for churches and stuff. That is heated up. There's a special method of doing the faces. It's basically using enameling, the high fiber enamel that I use now to paint. There is a lot of things starting to use fused glass in their windows. I actually collaborated with Patrick Clark from Sunlight Rockaway. He did 12 out in Washington, and in one of the windows was the baptismal of John. And in the River of Jordan, he commissioned me to give him glass to do the river, so it looks like it still flows, but yet it's piece of glass. So I did using iridescent glass with glass pieces and powders, so that it didn't look stagnant. It looked like it. There's a lot of interconnection with a lot of glass artists now.
I just think it's important that people see your work and understand the differences between, like I said, fused glass and cast glass and so on.
So I'm going to show you different pieces that I've done for different techniques. This is a casting piece. These are actually my fingers that I casted using the lost wax method, and then casting with glass. This piece is a sculpture that I did. Let's see if you can see a better. A sculpture that I did using drape glass, which is a very hard method. This has been in the kiln like 8 times. But this is going back to my roots of trying to do something recycled. I can't recycle glass in a sense we're using beach glass, but I can use recycle pieces or object glass. And so that's, to help the environment. This piece, this plate, is actually using the powders that I was showing you earlier. This piece sculpture that I've done that uses stained glass in different pieces, but it gives it a very open look to it. This is a dog that I did that shows that I'm getting back to my roots with painting using high fire enameling. This is an example of that. These are platters that you using the different glass pieces that I was showing earlier. This is a platter or a bowl using the glass pieces that I was showing you, but this one is transparent. As you can see, it's very transparent. This piece is a sculpture that has etching on the bottom here. I don't know if you can see it with the phone, but matter of life, and is etching the pieces that go up. This is a vase that I did just to show you, and this was made upside down like that. This is casting. This is the stone, and then 2 casts of the stone. Here is a box that shows what could happen. This is a wax piece that is going to be, when it turns to glass, when I do glass, it'll be part of this box. And the same thing with this. So.
Thank you, Renee.
You can find me at bellscreation.com. And in there is, I have a e-commerce under gift store. And there is my jewelry is there. I have vases, I have platters, I have candles, cheese platters, and there is wall. And then in the rest of my website is my sculptures, my wall hangings. I also do architectural accents, which you can use in a bathroom or a kitchen or anywhere you have tile or glass tile or stone. You can put glass accents, and there's pieces of that. Also, my mobiles are also in my website, and you could definitely find me on Instagram and Facebook under Renee Rad, R-A-D. And there's a link in my website for those to go into those social medias, and also on LinkedIn. I will be posting shortly holiday things to start shopping for the holidays. This year I'm starting to make menorahs. Somebody suggested I make menorahs, so I'm going to make that. But I have Christmas ornaments and different things like that. It's very unique to use glass because people don't usually give glass as a gift. And so it's something different and unique because we all looking for different and unique things, gifts for people. So appreciate it if you would check out my website and look at my work. And if you'd like you could buy it directly from my website, and or you can commission me for any pieces that you'd like, or see something similar but not the color that you possibly wanted, and we could work out something. I need a 2 to 3 week timeline on it, depending on what the piece is, and could definitely help you out with that.
Renee, thank you very much for taking the time to do this interview. I really appreciate it. I hope the people that are watching this appreciate it too. I found, just so you know, I found you quite by accident. You had liked one of my posts on Instagram, and I was thinking, who should I interview next for my Makin It series? And I looked at the people who liked what I posted. I saw you, and I was like, oh, glass! I got to have somebody who does glass. So I'm really, really happy that I discovered you, and I look forward to seeing you in the future, perhaps at one of the art shows. Yes. Thank you so much. Would you like to say a couple words before we wrap up?
I really super appreciate the fact that you found me and is interviewing me. I really appreciate it. I definitely have a passion about my glass art, but I have a passion about the public learning about glass art and seeing it. And that's kind of like my mission to get glass out there for people to see and appreciate and have it in their homes or office and or on their bodies with jewelry, but just so that there's an appreciation of glass and what I do every day. And very much appreciate the fact that you have asked me for this interview. Thank you so much. So grateful.
You're welcome, Renee. You're very welcome. But I'm so glad that you are continuing to learn the glass arts. I think that's really wonderful. And I think it's obvious to me that you're doing your level best to get the word out about glass to the public. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, Renee, have a great day. Thank you for watching another episode of Making It. I'm Dom Gervasi, hoping that you too are making it a good one wherever you are.